folks, as this is the month in which our nation celebrates its independence, we only thought it fitting to dedicate our next few Fun Fact Friday episodes to a part of the American Revolution seldom talked about, a battle in particular that would help turn the tide in the Southern theater. We're also going to be discussing an oft-overlooked patriot who, though not nearly as popular or well-known as the likes of Nathaniel Greene or Thomas Sumter, played his part in this particular battle, helping to birth a nation, and in turn will go on to help birth an American legend. The stories are true, the people are real. Stay tuned as we embark upon telling the story of the Battle of Kings Mountain. Now, the year was 1780, a dark year for the patriot cause. It was the year of Benedict Arnold's treason, a year of starvation for General George Washington's ragged little army at Morristown, New Jersey, and it was a year of unrelenting defeats for the patriot forces. But British victories have begun to exact a heavy toll, because now British Parliament has decided that they can no longer lend aid to support this foreign war. Sir Henry Clinton, commander of British forces in America, decides to help ease the demands on his troops by shifting the focus of the war to the Southern theater. To do this, he would have to employ the Southern strategy, which they began to do in 1778, following the disaster which was called the Saratoga Campaign. But now, once they got to the South, they were able to start implementing the Southern strategy after they had successfully captured Savannah, Georgia. And due to the fairly large Loyalist population in the backwoods, the Southern strategy met with initial success. Now, after they had captured Savannah, Georgia, and repulsed the Franco-American attack on their position in October of 1779, the British felt that the time was now right to take the war into the Carolinas, hoping to firstly capture the port of Charleston, South Carolina, with intentions to use it as a base for further operations. Now, they did this on March 29th through April 1st, capturing the 5,500-man garrison of Charleston, which in turn would see that Sir Henry Clinton, now confident that with the reduction of this important port, well, all the Loyalists throughout the Carolinas would now flock to their cause and swear their allegiance and loyalty to the king. But unfortunately, this was going to be a misjudgment. Now, at this time, after the British had captured the port of Charleston, they began to make their way through South Carolina, consolidating their hold by establishing a chain of fortified posts from Georgetown to Augusta on the Savannah River to Fort 96 on the western frontier. But leading the advance of the British forces is Lieutenant Colonel Bannister Tarleton, leader of the British Legion, a mixed force of cavalry and light infantry. It was Tarleton who was sent in advance by Charles Cornwallis to capture a regiment of Virginia militia led by Abraham Buford. This in turn would lead to the Battle of Waxalls. But although the Waxalls proved to be a disastrous defeat for the Americans, and the British thought that, well, the conquest of the South was nearly complete by this point, they couldn't have been more wrong, because they had misjudged the character of the people in the backwoods once they had heard about what they called the Waxalls Massacre. But nonetheless, Sir Henry Clinton is confident, so much so that he ends up sailing back to New York, leaving in command of the Southern forces Charles Cornwallis, with telling him to recruit and train Loyalists to supplement the militia forces in the Southern theater. Cornwallis is not eager to do this, mind you. He detests these undisciplined dirty shirts, these backwoodsmen, thinking of them as little more than rebels in disguise, fomenters of rebellion. But the matter is taken out of his hands, for just before Clinton sails back to New York, he appoints in charge of this recruiting and training operation a 35-year-old major of the 71st Highland Regiment, Major Patrick Ferguson. As Ferguson is recruiting and training these Loyalists in the backwoods, well, the previously unconcerned backwoodsmen in the Virginia and Carolina frontier started to take note of the British advances, because although previously they had thought themselves far removed from the conflict, they now began to realize that the war was in fact coming to their doorstep. Seeing nothing for it but to gather the militia and harass the British forces, they began to do so with vigor, and they attempted to cut down Ferguson's forces at every creek crossing between here and the north. And this began to irritate Ferguson, so much so that after the Battle of Musgrove's Mill, he released a prisoner of war named Samuel Phillips and sent him to the Overmountain communities with a letter that would, like the Battle of Waxhalls, prove to be a fatal mistake for the British forces. Well, folks, This concludes our Fun Fact Friday for the week, and we want to thank you so much for joining along, especially because we're posting on a holiday, Independence Day. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned as we explore more of the stories and events surrounding the Battle of Kings Mountain. But until next week, we just hope that you all have a safe and wonderful Independence Day. Enjoy freedom, family, food, and of course, fireworks. But until next week, this is Isaac White from the Crockett Tavern Museum signing off for now and saying goodbye and God bless.